When you think of the most powerful Daedric Princes, who comes to mind? Perhaps it's the fiery wrath of Mehrunes Dagon, the cruel terror of Molag Bal, or the wild hunt of Hircine. But in the darkness of Oblivion, there is one whose power is often overlooked, Peryite, the Prince of Pestilence. To many, he is merely an afterthought, his realm of decay and disease dismissed as a lesser, even pitiable domain. But that view is dangerously misguided. So what if I told you that Peryite is in fact far stronger than most people believe? At first glance, Peryite's realm seems like the very antithesis of power. His dominion seems vague and ill-defined. His followers, diseased and desperate, are seen as victims rather than devotees. As his avatar, Peryite often takes the form of a green, four-legged dragon, something which is often seen as a mockery of the dragon god Akatosh. But to dismiss him as weak is to misunderstand his true nature. Peryite's strength doesn't come from violence or grandeur, it's far subtler, rooted in the balance and order he enforces over the very forces that govern life and death. His power is quiet, relentless, and, in its own way, more pervasive than any other Daedric princes. Peryite's association with disease and decay naturally evokes revulsion from mortals. His titles, the Blighted Lord, the Bringer of Disease, the Lord of Abundant Pus and Bountiful Vomit, are hardly designed to inspire admiration. To mortals, his blessings are seen as curses, often delivered in the form of plagues that rot the body and ravage whole communities. Yet these associations obscure his role as a meticulous taskmaster, a being who enforces balance in ways both subtle and devastating. Disease is only one aspect of his sphere, part of a larger whole, that of the natural order. Peryite's order is different to the cold, clinical structure of a prince like Gigalag. For him, order is to be found in maintaining the rhythms of life and death, the balance between the natural and the artificial, the cycles which govern the very laws of nature itself. He is not a lord of chaos, but of contamination with purpose, his plagues serving as instruments to cleanse and maintain balance, rather than destroy indiscriminately. Peryite's demeanour further contributes to his underestimation. Unlike his more flamboyant peers, he adopts a calm and formal tone, even when slighted by mortals. Instead of meeting rejection with rage, he observes, adapts, and persists, a rare trait among the Daedric princes. This restraint, however, should not be mistaken for weakness. In the chaos of Oblivion and the mortal planes alike, patience can be its own form of power. Perhaps this is precisely the way Peryite prefers to be seen. Never let your enemies know your true strength. It's an old adage, and one that Peryite seems to embody. By appearing weak, he ensures his true power remains unnoticed until it is far too late. While others scheme and boast of their power, he weaves his influence quietly, his plagues poised to bring even the strongest nations to their knees. After all, even the mightiest empires can be felled by an invisible pestilence. Such perceptions, then, are not only incomplete, but dangerously so. To understand Peryite, one must look beyond the surface, to the unrelenting forces of nature he represents, and to the order that his pestilence ultimately serves. It is here that his true strength lies, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment to reveal itself. At first glance, the idea of a Daedric prince governing through disease seems inherently chaotic and destructive. Plagues ravaging cities, vermin spreading filth, and sickness bringing suffering and death to the innocent. Yet, within Peryite's sphere lies a paradox, one that transforms destruction into a force for order. Peryite's mastery over disease is not an exercise in mindless devastation. Instead, it represents the natural cycles that govern life itself. As any naturalist will understand, in the wild, sickness controls overpopulation, allowing ecosystems to thrive within their natural limits. Among societies, plagues have historically forced adaptation, forging resilience in the crucible of hardship. This isn't chaos, it is balance, and Peryite is its keeper. He is not the architect of senseless ruin, but the taskmaster who ensures that life and death proceed in their proper order. In this sense, Peryite's plagues serve as a brutal instructor. They cull the weak and compel the strong to adapt, reinforcing the unyielding truth that survival is earned, not given. Through pestilence, Peryite enforces the inevitability of change and the cyclical nature of existence. His influence may seem harsh, but it is no more cruel than the winter frost that forces the trees to shed its leaves, or the predator that prunes the herd. He embodies the truth that life is an equilibrium, forever teetering between renewal and decay. This perspective elevates Peryite beyond the perception of a mere bringer of blight. He is the embodiment of inevitability, a force that mortals cannot escape, nor should they seek to. Disease and decay are as much a part of the natural order as birth and renewal. To deny this is to deny the cycles that shape our very existence itself. Even Peryite's revolting titles take on a grim logic when seen through this lens. His grotesque elements are not signs of evil, but of transformation, breaking down the old to make way for the new. Like the decaying leaves that nourish the soil, or the fire that clears the forest for fresh growth, Peryite's pestilence ensures that life continues, not in spite of death, but because of it. And it must be remembered that in their own way, plagues are their own form of life. The microscopic organisms that cause them are all around us, far outnumbering any other life forms on Tamriel. And ultimately, they bend to only one master. Peryite teaches us that disease is not an anomaly. It is a reminder that no creature, no civilization is above the cycles of nature. In this truth lies the depth of Peryite's power, often misunderstood, often undervalued, but indispensable in maintaining the order of both Oblivion and Nirn. At first glance, the worshippers of Peryite might seem like the downtrodden and the desperate, those cast aside by society and left to languish in disease and squalor. It is true that many who turn to Peryite do so in times of despair, seeking solace or purpose in their suffering. To the untrained eye, these followers may appear as little more than victims, broken souls grasping for meaning amidst the torment of affliction. However, a deeper look reveals something far more profound. Peryite's worshippers are not merely victims, but participants in a grander understanding of life's relentless cycles. Peryite's worshippers come from all walks of life, from clandestine aristocrats to adherents of more grotesque cults. Members of the cult of natural order view Peryite's philosophy through a lens of pragmatism and reverence, believing that the world's imperfections must be cleansed by pestilence to restore its natural balance. These followers see themselves as enlightened stewards of the world's inevitable cycles, understanding Peryite not as a destructive force, but as the embodiment of order through chaos. Peryite's more extreme cultists glorify disease itself, embracing infection as a sacred gift. These devotees revel in their afflictions, spreading illness to others as an act of worship. Their zealotry often alienates them from society, leading many to ostracize them entirely. Yet, to these worshippers, every malady is a divine blessing from the taskmaster. As Kesh the Clean, the leader of Peryite's Skyrim cult, eloquently explains, "He is the pus in the wound. Oh, proper ones curl their noses, but it is pus that drinks foul humours and restores the blood. I worship Peryite, yes, because sometimes the world can only be cleansed by disease." This perspective captures the duality of Peryite's philosophy. Disease is both destruction and renewal. But for many, the path to Peryite begins with desperation. The afflicted, a group of Bretons in the Reach during the Fourth Era, exemplify this. Peryite infected them with a debilitating wasting disease, granting them immunity to its worst effects in return for their devotion. These followers exhibited the grotesque ability to spew poisonous vomit, a symbol of their transformation under Peryite's influence. While others might see this as a curse, the afflicted believed that their suffering served a greater purpose, to prepare for the day when they would spread their blessing across the face of Nirn. This theme of suffering as a form of enlightenment is echoed among the Reachmen, who venerate Peryite as a force of nature who maintains balance. In their eyes, plagues are not tragedies, but opportunities to grow stronger, ensuring that the next generation is better adapted to the harsh realities of life. Peryite's influence, while painful, is seen as necessary for the survival of their people. At the heart of Peryite's worship lies a profound philosophical truth. Order can only arise through decay. His followers understand that disease, unpleasant as it may be, is an integral part of the cycle of life. Like pus clearing infection from a wound, pestilence cleanses the world, allowing for growth and renewal. Some of Peryite's extreme cultists even harbour the ambition of creating an all-consuming plague, one which will cleanse the world of its imperfections and usher in a new age of order. Yet, not all of the prince's followers pursue such apocalyptic visions. Some view him as a protector against greater evils, building temples and offering sacrifices to invoke his protection. Yet the question remains, are Peryite's followers true devotees, or are they victims of his divine machinations? To worship Peryite often means to embrace suffering, whether through disease, social rejection, or arduous tasks. For some, like the Reachmen or the cultists of the natural order, this suffering is a small price to pay for understanding the deeper truths of existence. For others, like the afflicted, their devotion seems indistinguishable from torture, their lives consumed by the maladies they worship. In the end, Peryite's followers embody his paradoxical nature. They are both agents of his will and subjects of his dominion, united by their shared belief in the cleansing power of decay. Their devotion, whether willing or unwilling, serves as a reminder of Peryite's pervasive influence over the natural order. In the annals of Tamrielic history, great calamities are often attributed to the clash of armies or the wrath of the gods. But few forces have proven as devastating or as enduring as pestilence. This silent, unseen force embodies the essence of Peryite's power, unrelenting, inescapable, and profoundly transformative. Unlike the reckless destruction wrought by princes like Mehrunes Dagon, Peryite's strength lies in his patience. Disease does not rush, it spreads quietly, often unnoticed, seeping into every corner of life until it can no longer be ignored. It is not a question of if, but when. This inevitability is the essence of his influence, an unstoppable march of nature that neither might nor magic can fully extinguish. Even with the seemingly miraculous cures offered by healers and the divines, disease persists eternally, adapting and evolving to reshape the natural order. Consider the Thracian plague, an epidemic unleashed by the Slode late in the First Era. It caused almost apocalyptic devastation, claiming the lives of perhaps half the population of Tamriel, forever altering the political and social landscape of the continent. In the same way, the Carnarton flu left scars that no spell or potion could heal, and in the case of the Cthringi, wiping out entire races altogether. In each case, these diseases accomplished what armies could not. They crippled empires and brought the mighty to their knees. Though we have no direct evidence that Peryite had a hand in unleashing these pandemics, it is difficult to imagine that the Prince of Pestilence would allow them to rage without at least his tacit approval. So with all this being said, why is the power of Peryite so underestimated? Well, perhaps this is due to the fact that he rarely intervenes in mortal affairs. As the Prince of Natural Order, his primary focus lies in maintaining the balance of Oblivion itself, a largely thankless task that keeps him working quietly behind the scenes. Peryite is charged with keeping the Daedrons, a kind of unformed chaos native to Oblivion, from spiralling out of control, which would lead to destructive tears in the fabric of reality known as realm rips. Though sometimes dismissed by his peers as menial busywork, this task demands extraordinary will and power, though it admittedly lacks the theatrical flair of feats like Molag Bal's Plane Meld or Mehrunes Dagon's Daedric invasions. Another reason we might misunderstand Peryite is because, out of all the Daedric princes, we know the least about his plane of Oblivion. The realm is almost completely inaccessible to mortals, and even the most powerful Daedrologists have been unable to infiltrate it. The only mortal we know who's been allowed entry was the hero of Kvatch, who helped retrieve the souls of 5 worshippers who had become trapped in their master's realm. Thus, we can only speculate as to what lurks in the pits, and what dark pestilence might be released if their gates were ever thrown open. Above all, what makes Peryite's power unique is its consistency. Unlike war or natural disaster, order is something that remains unnoticed unless it fails. Peryite requires no dramatic displays to assert his dominance. His mere presence is enough to command respect. He works his will by sowing disease, culling the weak, keeping the delicate scales of nature tipped in his balance. But this does not mean he can be easily spurned. In the 4th Era, Orkandor, a powerful mage and servant of Peryite, betrayed his master, taking the command of his afflicted. Peryite sent the last Dragonborn to exact his vengeance. Orkandor was slain, his followers scattered, and his soul dragged into the depths of the pits to be tormented for eternity. This serves as a stark reminder: underestimate Peryite at your peril. Through this lens, Peryite emerges not as a weak or insignificant prince, but as a being whose influence is woven into the very fabric of life itself. His plagues and pestilence are not acts of cruelty, but of inevitability, a reminder of nature's unyielding cycles. In this, Peryite is not too different from death itself, a force that operates not out of malice, but as a necessary counterbalance to life. In the end, Peryite's power is a force that cannot be conquered or ignored, one that shapes the world whether we notice it or not. Peryite's strength is nature's invisible hand, guiding the lives of mortals from behind the curtain. He is inevitability personified, a reminder that even the smallest ripple can change the course of nature for all. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you would like to see more videos on the Elder Scrolls. This is still a new channel, but I'm blown away by the response, and I would like to thank everyone who's watched and subscribed over the last few weeks. And feel free to let me know if there are any topics you would like to see covered here. And until next time, wealth beyond measure.